because if I don't say that out loud, I won't remember.
So while we were gone, they modified Zoom again. And it now says that we require you to have your camera off when you log in. This week, I'll see if I can find a setting to change that, but that's why your video wasn't working. And you had to manually click on the camera thing.
Oh, it might have been because I did it on my phone. I might have not. There's a button I pushed that I might have screwed up. So we studied yesterday. We usually study on Saturdays for Bible study. And yesterday we were in Cullman, Alabama, which is a town of 20,000 in north central Alabama. And so we just drove downtown and found a park bench and got out of the car and studied Bible study for a couple of hours.
A few strange looks.
Yeah. But we got home at about 1:20 last night. So but we had a very good time. We went on Wednesday and flew out of Corpus, went to Dallas, went to Huntsville. Fun fact, Huntsville is the fastest growing city in Alabama. It has now surpassed Birmingham. It's the most educated town in Alabama. It is got a lot of space and military people there. And anyhow, we visited towns near there, but not in Huntsville.
You should do a tour video. We've got to get onto a Bible study.
Anyhow, you want to say anything else about that?
Oh no, it's a good place. We did. I've got to tell you, people who waited on us, people who, different stores, different things, were so much nicer. And I'm thinking, I remember when Texas was like this. We come in, and I'm not seeing it. It's a strange phenomenon. I don't know what's happened in this state, but it's a pretty clear delineation. It's not like, just your perception because you're new. We get a lot of people here, if you go like to the pharmacy, that they don't really care if you get it or not. And it was a different atmosphere. So I'm going to spend some time trying to figure that out. But it was a beautiful place. Yep. Let's move on.
Okay. Prayers. And like I said, I haven't done. Laura had the flu all week up to 103 temperature. Yeah. And so hopefully she is on the mends. Cheryl is on camera today and she looks better. That's good. I really want to lift up Robin's online, and we got an email when we were in the airport. I haven't been able to respond yet, and it really made me think. We've been praying for her brother-in-law Jim, who is married to her sister Tracy, and when people are dealing with chronic illnesses, the people that care for these people have to be lifted up in prayer. We've been lifting up Jim, but let's lift up his wife Tracy too. It's a difficult time, and the way people act or react to long-term and possibly terminal illnesses are difficult for the whole family.
It's hard on the whole family. That's bottom line. All of these things we try and remember to keep the family in our prayers, because it divides people, at least for a while. So keep her in mind.
And keep Robin in your prayer, because she's trying, and sometimes you try and it still doesn't work.
Yeah. It is good to see Cheryl. I know you've had so much, with the medical problems. Anyone else? Yes.
I have one. My friend's wife is going under the knife in San Antonio tomorrow morning. If successful, she expects a 3 to 4 week hospital stay. She's with the same doctor that took care of my wife. She's in good hands. So,
do you mind sharing the name?
Let's see what happens.
A first name?
Kimberly.
And so she's going to have surgery this week. Jean remembered a friend. Kay.
And I have one.
Pardon me, Kay Bramlett.
Yeah, she's fine.
Oh,
Yes. My brother-in-law Richard, he finally got a doctor's appointment on Monday to do the MRI or CAT scan or whatever it is. And then Tuesday he meets with his doctor to go in through his groin and up to his brain to relieve some blood.
okay.
Scary.
Very
Well,
scary.
yeah, it is. And his name is Richard. And you know, we do get feedback
Yes.
often. It's important that we remember people in our prayers. It is. And they will tell you how important it is. So let's be faithful about that. God, we look around, we see a world that you made that is marvelous. We sometimes overestimate our part in it, and sometimes we don't see our part in it, but you've made a good place for us. We have so many people that have concerns for friends and family members, and we do bring them to you, and we remember to come with the expectation that you'll bring the comfort and the healing and guide the doctors. You know our hearts. We persist. We continue to come to you because we understand, we see your love for us. We know that we don't last on this earth forever. And there comes a time, but the time of people who care about you, people who are part of your life is important. But we also seek your hand. There are things that you do that we can. And that's what we've asked for today with these, for all of us. Keep our hearts and ears open.
Okay, we are studying Genesis and we're starting in chapter 18. And-
Mary,
Yeah.
Scott's mic has gone back out. I don't know what's going on with his mic.
Well, no, I got one here. How about now? Better?
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, we are on chapter 18, and chapter 18 and 19 specifically has a lot of strange stuff. So we're going to ask if you'll wait till we get through some of it before you ask questions, because our answer is going to be, we don't know.
That's going to be the prevailing answer, but it merits questions. I mean, there are things that we do. Can I start with a real quick story?
Yeah.
I'll try and make it fast because it has to do with God dealing with people directly. When we were first married, we had 3 small children. We were going to a church, and one day the pastor is doing a lesson, and she's talking about when Paul is in prison, and God shook the walls, the earthquake, however, and the walls were broken down. And the pastor says, "Isn't it marvelous that we serve a God who breaks down walls?" And I hear, "Unless you happen to be the wall." And I can tell you I heard it. I can't tell you that I heard it with my ears. I thought I did. And I turned and looked over at Mary to see if, because I looked behind and there was nobody to have said that. And then I looked at Mary and she doesn't know why I'm looking at her. And I'm sitting here thinking, I don't even know what that means unless you happen to be the wall. She says, it's marvelous that God breaks down walls. And I hear this, unless you happen to be the wall. And I went home that day all afternoon. I'm trying to understand what was that about. And lots of prayer and lots of looking, and it finally begins to come to me that very often, and that this has been one of those lessons that has stuck with me for the rest of my life, that often we get in situations and we say to God, I want you to make this better. I want you to fix this. And we're part of the wall. We are literally part of the thing, and we want God to make it all better, but don't make us give up this thing that we've built, or whatever we've done. And I could give some examples. I won't, but I think most of you can kind of figure it out. whether it's relationship, whether it's money, whether, you know, what we're really saying is, God, I've done this thing, I've got myself in a situation, and I want you to make it right. And it's not right. And we talked last week about Abraham rationalizing his actions. Well, you know, it's an okay thing to do. And it wasn't an okay thing to do. And to break down that wall, what do you want to do when you now have had a child with a maidservant? You've ignored God's promises. You've got a child, the maidservant says this is your firstborn, and it's gonna be a problem forever. And it is. How does God break that wall down? What are you asking for when you ask for that to be done? And you're going to see some of that in what we're going to study today. But also, if you ask me, do I believe when it says that God came to Abraham, do I believe it literally? Absolutely. I can tell you, I don't understand the mechanics of it, having experienced it. But there's no question that I mean, I heard a voice. Been a couple of other times, but that one is easy to digest. So when we read these things, if you want to know exactly how does that work, I can't answer it. But if you want to know, do I absolutely believe this happened, you know, fundamentally this way? I do. And keep that in mind, because this is going to be a very strange section of the Bible.
So Genesis 18, verse 1.
Before we go there, is the good book itself, the written word, is that just the human element of capitalizing the Lord, or not? Or how does the good book itself say it originally?
It is in the Hebrew writing. You're asking specifically about when it says the Lord, and when it's all caps, it's Yahweh. Words have meaning, and they have importance, and it tells you. There's another word that gets translated Lord that is Adonai, and Adonai can be a king, it can be a ruler, it can be someone who simply, you know, it has a station above you, and you acknowledge their position. So Adonai is, you know, you have to really work for the meaning of Adonai, and that's when it's not in all caps. But when it says all caps Lord, if you go to the Hebrew, it is Yahweh. It is always Yahweh. And we'll talk more about that. But it's mixed.
And this part, if you're following along in the Bible and in the Berean Bible, and I don't know how it is in every Bible, but when it is Yahweh, every letter of Lord is capitalized. And so in this first part of 18, you see Lord more than once. One time it's all capitalized and one time it's not. And they are different words when it comes down in Hebrew.
Let's move through it.
Okay. Then the Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre in the heat of the day, while he was sitting at the entrance of his tent. And Abraham looked up and saw three men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. My Lord, said Abraham, if I have found favor in your sight, please do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought that you may wash your feet and rest yourself under the tree. And I will bring you a bit of bread so that you may refresh yourself. This is why you have passed your servant's way. After that, you may continue on your way. Yes, they replied, you may do as you have said. So Abraham hurried into the tent and said to Sarah, quick, prepare 3 sheaves of fine flour, knead it and bake some bread. Meanwhile, Abraham ran to the herd, selected a tender choice calf, and gave it to the servant, who hurried to prepare it. Then Abraham brought curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared, and he set them before the men and stood by them under the tree as they ate.
So, first it says the Lord, it's all caps, as Gene pointed out. Yahweh appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre. You notice, and it says, and in the heat of the day, and while he was sitting at the entrance of his tent, and Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. Now, Some people insist that when it says the Lord came, that Yahweh is one of the three men that's there. It doesn't actually say it. And it's even more clear in the Hebrew, where it looks as if God got his attention. And he's sitting in the entrance to the tent because in the heat of the day, in that area, we can tell you, we live there. It's hot. I locked the keys out of the car in the grocery store parking lot. And it was hot. And so they sit in the entrance to the tent. The places where there are trees, it's a real bonus. It's a real big deal to have some shade. So he's there resting. It sounds like God gets his attention. And then he looks up and there are three men standing there. And that word is undoubtedly men. We're going to come to, well, I can tell you that they're angels. There are some people who say it's three men because it's the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. I'm not going to argue with anybody about any of it. It seems odd to me. Spirit is ruach, which means breath, wind, or what we think of as spirit. To have the Holy Spirit embodied seems like a contradiction to me. But if somebody wants to say that, not everything that comes in threes is symbolic of God's presence and Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Nonetheless, these men show up. What I want you to see in this next bit, though, is what you're reading is classic Middle Eastern hospitality. All right? I'm not sure that Abraham knows who they are at this point. I'm not sure it would matter. You notice he addresses them as my Lord. That's Adonai. It's actually Adonai, but that'll confuse everybody. It's Adonai. And so he would say that. It's what's known as an honorific at times. I'm going to give you credit for being an important person. If these guys, someone shows up that looks like an escaped slave, you probably don't treat them this well. But there is in the Middle East, there is this real desire to show extreme hospitality. Would you concur with that? You've been there. Yes. And we had a tour guide tell us this whole thing that in, Arab culture, which, they're one and the same with some differences, but someone comes to your house, you have a place for them to wash their feet. You bring them a cup of probably hot tea, sometimes coffee, and then they're supposed to ask for a second one. And I said, how do you know that? And he says, you just do because you live here. And then you go through all these dinner things. And at some point in the evening, you serve a second cup of coffee. And that's their sign it's time to go home. So there are all these rituals that go on that we don't understand. But these guys show up and he says, Adonai, my Lord, please stay here with me. Let me give my hospitality and I'll wash your feet. And when you travel in sandals and stuff, but I'll wash your feet and then I'll get some, I'll give you some water to drink and I'll prepare a morsel of bread and you can eat with me. And they said, yes, we will allow you to do that. So this is not maybe what it seems to us yet. And he runs off and tells Sarah, runs into the tent and tells Sarah, take 3 seahs of flour. A seah is a measure, and it's only mentioned twice in the Bible, and there's a lot of argument about how much. Clearly, she's making a good amount of bread. There will probably be more people than just this eat from it, but this is going to be a lavish presentation. So he tells Sarah, take 3 seahs of flour, fine flour, and make some bread for these guys. And he runs off, selects a calf, has a guy prepare it. I mean, they're going to butcher a calf, a good calf, on the spot in the heat. This is a lavish show of hospitality. But at this point, you can't read into it that Abraham knows that these are angels or the very presence of God. One other thing, and I got to mention, a lot of people believe that this is what's known as a theophany. And a theophany is when God is physically present. They don't like to explain, well, does that mean it's God or did he use some human body? They won't discuss that too much, but they insist that because of the words used, This is a theophany. This is literally God. Well, then why are there three of them? And we'll talk about that more in a minute. I've talked too much.
And the curds and milk.
Oh, curds and milk. Well, that's just another thing. I mean, you're a farmer rancher. He's bringing the best he's got. Curds, that's what they make cheese out of, right? That's the stuff. But it's rich food, and he's bringing them the best that he has.
What hit me on this, somebody stops by unexpectedly and you say, I'm gonna bring you some, I'll bring you some water. And I mean, they're there for hours and hours. And that's something, even when we lived, I know we've told the story in Israel, they just thought we were uncouth when we would pick up a croissant and coffee and drive to work eating in the car. They're like, you don't have time to sit and eat. I mean, so this.
We really disgusted them, and meals can last for hours. And they let us know that we disgusted them. But it's understood that he's not going to bring a little water and a morsel of bread, even though that's what it says. And this is the thing we have to get used to. Within that culture, everybody, they know he's going to honor them, and this is going to be a long, drawn out affair. Sounds like he says, will you stay here for a few minutes? But he's giving them rest and comfort on the road.
We're now in chapter 18, I'm going to read 9 to 15. And this includes one of a sentence that Scott thinks is one of the most chilling accounts in the Bible. So listen. Where is your wife Sarah? They asked. There in the tent, he replied. Then the Lord said, I will surely return to you at this time next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son. Now Sarah was behind him, listening at the entrance to the tent. And Abraham and Sarah were already old and well along in years. Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So she laughed to herself, saying, after I'm worn out and my master is old, will I now have this pleasure? And the Lord asked Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, can I really bear a child when I am old? Is anything too difficult for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you in about a year, and Sarah will have a son. But Sarah was afraid, so she denied it and said, I did not laugh. No, replied the Lord, but you did laugh.
Yeah. So here we go. And I've gone to those great lengths to tell you that nothing that we've heard so far would indicate that these are angels or a theophany, literally God present. God does speak to Abraham earlier than this. But at this point, they say, where's your wife, Sarah? Okay, oops. They know the wife's name. Maybe you could explain that. Maybe he could. I don't know if he knows who he's dealing with at this point fully, or if this makes, but where's your wife, Sarah? And well, she's there in the tent. And the Lord said, now is this one of the three speaking to him? It's not really clear. And I'm going to read it to you as it's written, and you can make up your own mind. But at this point, there's nothing that's made it clear. Does he hear this? But he says, the Lord said, I will surely return to you this time next year, and your wife, Sarah, will have a son. Not just a baby, a son. That's important. And Abraham gets this word from God. Is it one of the three? Well, at first it says, where's your wife, Sarah? They said. The second time, it's the Lord, Lord caps, who says, I'm going to be back this way. Well, this time next year. And it sounds like it's the three. This is an odd passage. But you look at what happens. Sarah is just inside the tent. She hears them talking, and she's old. She's well beyond childbearing years. And listen to her comment. She laughs to herself about this promise. Does she know that this is Yahweh speaking? Would you do that? I don't even know. But look at her response, and you can almost hear it in the.
And when you say she laughed to herself, you said in Hebrew that means
It is very much internal. It is something within. She doesn't laugh out loud, and I wish I could remember the exact word right now, but it is a word that means something internal, something inside. She laughs to herself, and she says, "So, after I'm worn out and my master is old, will I now have displeasure?" She's mad at God that she hasn't been given a child. And she says, "What? Now that I'm too old to do any, now I'm supposedly going to have this honor of being able to have a son?" And the response is, the Lord asked Abraham, and by the way, I want you to notice it says, "My master is old." My master. Now that I'm worn out and my master is old. And that sounds kind of ugly. It's her husband she's talking about. It's Abraham. But the word that's used is Adon. It's the root. It is Adonai, right? So this is not like we told you back in early part of this that they later on come to use the word Baal to indicate wife, and the husband is actually Baal and the wife is one who is owned. This is not an ownership thing. This is an honor title. This is Adonai. He is the head of the household, but this is not an ugly context about saying my master is old. But she is bitter and she is laughing and saying, "What? Now I'm too old. Now I'm supposedly now that it's too late, I'm supposedly going to have this pleasure of a son." And the Lord Yahweh asked Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Can I really bear a child?' And I'll come back, sure, we'll have a son. Is anything too difficult for God, for Yahweh?" And Sarah was afraid hearing that, right? Why did she laugh? Now, she laughed to herself. It's important. The word choices are important. She laughs to herself. God knows her heart. And he says, "Why did Sarah laugh?" And she hears from in the tent and comes to the door of the tent and denied it. And she says, I didn't laugh. "No," replied the Lord, "but you did laugh." That to me is absolutely chilling. The idea that he's saying, and she, realizing what she's done, tries to lie to God. And it's a fruitless exercise. And the surety where he says, "No, you did." That's just one of the most chilling, frightening things in the entire Bible to me. I would not want to find myself in that position. I'm not sure that I haven't a few times, but this idea of trying to lie to God doesn't work out. So what's happening here is exactly what it sounds like. She has done something and she has been reprimanded.
I have a couple of questions. Why, not why, that's a wrong question.
You have a mic? Okay.
The Lord's reply or the Lord's statement to Abraham, is there an indication here that he is holding Abraham responsible for the inward thoughts and laughter of the wife? I mean, God may have heard it, but I don't know that Abraham even knows what's going on.
Make this be just about people. There is a protocol, just as there is for the hospitality. The husband is the head of the household, and he is responsible for what she does. Now, he addresses it, and Abraham doesn't even know. I talk in the New Testament often when Jesus is teaching, he's talking this way, but he's teaching to his disciples. He's preparing them. A lot of these, well, this is the same sort of thing. He speaks to Abraham, but he's clearly speaking to Sarah in this. And is he responsible for it? Well, in a way, he is. And I just realized I could tell you a real world example, but you would think less of me. And I'm not going to do that today. But yes, he's the head of the household. But it's also one of those things where it's proper to direct this to Abraham, and I think knowing she's going to react.
Well, obviously we hear it in the next chapter with Lot and that being the head of the household. But right now, where we're going in the story, my point is you can't hide even your inward laughter from the Lord, which is a sign of supernatural.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the lesson that is being projected, whether it's capitalized or not. He knows where you are, where you've been. And then I thought the reprimand was very soft-handed. No, you did laugh. He didn't say you're condemned to hell, you're not going to be forgiven.
Okay, the idea of not knowing what the you know, the outcome of this is, but to have that kind of reprimand, to me, it may be soft-handed in that he doesn't strike her dead on the spot. Look, this, I keep trying to tell you, this Old Testament, I'll get right with you, John. This Old Testament is the story of the lineage of Messiah. These are the people who are in, it all leads to that one spot. It all leads to the sacrifice that comes at Passover in Jerusalem all those years later. These are the people. What effect do you think that she's going to be the mother of this nation, but also the mother of the lineage? What effect do you think that has on Sarah when she actively voices her doubt and her ridicule for God's promise? And then he turns and says, no, you did laugh. You didn't believe it. And you laughed at me. I don't think Sarah will ever do this again. I think this will change the way she raises the child. It would me. It absolutely would. So, I mean, I think it's important to remember the long game, the long story of what's happening here. And what she's about to become is the mother of this great nation that arises from that. And it begins, before it begins with her doubting God's promise and her laughing to herself about it. I think this is one of those life-changing experiences. And John Paul, you had...
Well, I was going to say, it's also the illustration that nothing stays still. Nothing does. And he's calling them on it, and that's an illustration to us that, hey, we might think we're getting by with stuff. We might think, oh, we're all this sophisticated and all this stuff. We're not. And he's telling you right here, nothing.
And Ty, the two things you said together about consequences, he didn't just strike her dead on the spot, but there are consequences. And we often, as John Paul says, think we can get by with stuff, and there are consequences. Sometimes they're, you know, it's not like being struck dead on the spot, but sometimes they're fairly big consequences. Yeah, I think you're all right on both counts.
Verse 16.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, the question. My Bible says, and one of them said, I truly return to you about this.
Oh.
It's thank you for that. I mean, thank you.
Terry,
Terry,
I didn't hear that, Scott.
Terry has the Bible. I'll repeat it. Your mic's a little, you know, it's a little garbled, but I heard it. She's got a Bible that says, and one of them said, whereas this one says, the Lord said.
and as we go on to this next section, it appears.
What happens is that people who are doing translations think, well, you know, I better clear that up for them, because I don't think that it's really saying God said this. They think it's probably three angelic beings, three angels. And so I'm gonna kind of modify this to tell people the right thing. And often that's their opinion. The Berean that we use is really the best I've found. If you do it literally word for word, because their syntax is different, it can get really difficult. But they do a very good job. And if the Hebrew says Yahweh said, that's very confusing, Terry, but that's what the word is. And I'm not going to argue with the translation because I don't understand everything that's going
Well,
on
and it
here.
sounds like from this next section, we read that Yahweh is one of the three.
It does sound like that. And I you know, I can't argue with anybody who wants to go that way.
Okay, so verse 16. When the men got up to leave, so dinner's over finally, They looked over, they looked out over Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them off. And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and through him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. For I have chosen him, so he will command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, in order that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he has promised. Then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, because their sin is so grievous. I will go down to see if their actions fully justify the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will find out. And the two men turned away and went towards Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord.
And we got lots of time.
Okay.
So I did this way. We did this way on purpose, because we let it unfold the way it's being told. The further we get down in this, you notice near the end, it says that the two men went on ahead and one stayed. And the indication is that this one is different. So when it says Yahweh speaks, is this God somehow present? It appears to be. I don't know how that works. I'm not going to try and tell you how that works. I can tell you that hearing God speak is something that I understand, and I absolutely believe that's what happens. And beyond that, read it the way it says. This is what we're being told. So the Lord speaks, and it says it's in quotes. This is him speaking out loud, apparently. When it says, shall I lie to Abraham? It doesn't mean that he's debating with himself. He's actually saying the words. This is my guy. He's the father of the nation. He's my chosen one. And he says in front of Abraham, can I hide from you what I'm about to do? Obviously not. You're my guy. You need to know this. Abraham has a new life and a new place in life that has started. And God reveals this thing, that there's been this great cry go out from Sodom and Gomorrah. And it sounds like I'm going to go down like I'm not sure. Keep in mind, Abraham's nephew lives there. Everything we read after this, beginning here, is about the fact that Lot is Abraham's nephew. We care about our family. Gene, you're an attorney. Do people ever lie? Do they ever perjure themselves to cover up for a child?
Almost never.
Almost never. Yeah, we look out for our family. This Sodom and Gomorrah, this is a really twisted place. Lots of part of. And God is saying, I'm about to go down, and this is an odd occurrence too, but the cry is so great. I'm about to take this place out. I know your nephew is there. You're my guy. I'm going to explain it to you. This is why. All of this is almost singular in the entire Bible.
I'm sorry.
One thing that bothers me that I don't understand. Outcry from who?
Yeah, I asked the same question.
Mary asked the same question. I'll if you're going to talk more, I'm going to bring you a mic, but I'll repeat it for you. It says there's been an outcry to God about this Sodom and Gomorrah place. And Jack asked, outcry from who? For one thing, these people are very mobile. We were shocked when we went to Israel to find out like this, the pilgrimage from Bethlehem over to Jerusalem, or from, not Bethlehem, from Nazareth over to Bethlehem. People walked a lot. They were not stationary. And I would have to assume it's from people who wind up being affected by, and we're going to see some of the stuff that goes on. We pray about things, right? They would cry out to God, ask for God's judgment. You heard last week where Sarah says to Abraham, may God judge between you and me. So I would imagine that they are not a healthy place to go through, for travelers. That's a guess. That's all we're told. But that's what I think. And John Paul, you had something else?
Well, I was gonna say,
Or
the evil that was being done became so loud. I'll put it, if they turn away from God and turn towards some kind of Satan, that evil grew so great that it became an outcry. It became a roar.
it's another good explanation of it. I don't know. I will tell you, there are places in our big cities that I don't want to go. It's gotten so violent, and I've always, my whole life, seemed to attract that kind of attention. You know, I'm sort of at that breakover point. People bigger than me are big. People smaller than me, I don't have. But me, I'm like a target. I don't. There are neighborhoods in big cities I wouldn't go in on a bet. There are countries that I would probably choose to avoid. I would think that if people are living like that, what we should notice from this, though, if there's an outcry, the people, rather than just go, man, this is a rough place I live, they plead to God. I think that probably was more commonplace than it is in our society. You have
Well,
one more?
John Paul leads me to my two plateau stories here. One is down here, and one is God and the devil that are struggling all this time. And he just had enough. There was enough of an outcry that he says, man, I'm going to get rid of it.
So it seems. And
that's not the first time he gets rid of stuff.
It's good to look at some of these things rather than just passing over them in what I call mind novocaine. You just read them, they just become words. It's good to stop and think, wait a minute, what does that mean? And we do the best we can with it.
Abraham stepped forward and said, will you really sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous ones in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for sake of the 50 righteous men who are there? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous and the wicked are treated alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do what is right? So the Lord replied, excuse me. So the Lord replied, if I find 50 righteous ones within the city of Sodom, on their account, I will spare the whole place. Then Abraham answered, now that I have ventured to speak to the Lord, though I am just but dust and ashes, suppose the 50 righteous men lack 5. Will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5? He replied, if I find 45 there, I will not destroy it. Once again, Abraham spoke to the Lord. Suppose 40 are found there. He answered, on account of the 40, I will not do it. But Abraham said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak further. Suppose 30 are found there. He replied, if I find 30 there, I will not do it. And Abraham said, now that I have ventured to speak to the Lord, suppose 20 are found there. He answered, on account of the 20, I will not destroy it. Finally, Abraham said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak one more. Suppose 10 are found there. And he answered, on account of the 10, I will not destroy it. When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he departed, and Abraham returned home.
So now we have this very strange conversation. We've kind of gone to the place where we said, this appears to be God personified dealing. Why would he do that here? I don't know. This, though, is a very big time. I believe, after having read ahead and looked at this for a long time, I believe that the point of this is God knows that his nephew, he cares about his nephew. And he knows, I'm going to give him an explanation of what happens. Some of this is kind of a classic, almost bartering. Do we ever bargain with God? Has anybody ever tried that? You know, well, if you do this, I'll do that. It's a thing I've heard my whole life. But Abraham, he gets told, this is a wicked place. He's got to know it really is a wicked place, but he knows Lot's there. And he starts up saying, God, you wouldn't, that's not fair. You're all things good. Surely you wouldn't do something unfair. And he says, I tell you what, what if there were 50 good, righteous people there? You wouldn't destroy them because of these others. Now, what you have to know is that God understands there aren't 50. There aren't. This is an utterly morally bankrupt, really, really bad place. I'll get to that. But he negotiates with him. He says there were 50, and God says, okay, if there were 50, I won't destroy it. And he says, now that I've dared to speak to God, even though I'm nothing but dust, I'm going to do it some more. Do you see the negotiation? You hear people talk to someone like the king and say, your humble servant asked that you do something. This is what's going on. And it's not surprising to me. It's not even as weird as it sounds, except that he thinks he's in a position to barter with God. Well, what if it was only, okay, you said 50, but what if it was only 5 short of 50? It's only 10%. Would you destroy 45? This is fine. And he keeps going down. And that was always the plan. When he starts it with 50, the plan is always to then say, well, what if it's only a little bit less? What if it, I know I said the rug was 50 shekels, but what if it's only 51? You wouldn't, back out on the deal for 1 shekel, would you? Yeah, this is what's going on. And he keeps saying, fine, you want 30? I won't destroy it for 30. God knows there aren't 30. And we're going to see later on, you're going to understand even his nephew doesn't qualify. There isn't even one. But he says, sure, I'm about to do this thing. Yeah, that's fine. And they get all the way down. And you notice that the 2 others, and I should have mentioned this, the 2 others have gone off towards Sodom and Gomorrah. Are these angels?
The next sentence says they are.
The next sentence says they are. I thank you, Mary. Yes. And you have to say, well, why would it take 2 of them? If he's going to destroy a place, and we know that these angels are mighty beings. Carol has just finished a painting of Michael the Archangel doing battle. It's marvelous. She's going to do prints. She'll tell you how much they are. I recommend it highly. It is marvelous. But we hear in other places, like in Daniel, where an angel says, I heard, you were heard the moment you prayed, but the prince of the power of Persia withstood me. Actual battle going on. Do you think that if this place is this evil, that it has an angel, if you want to say the other side? I hate to use the word demon because it conjures up things, but these things are not being fought, as Gene loves to tell us, they're being fought on more than one level. And the idea of 2 of them going off would indicate to me that there's going to be a battle over this destruction. They're going to actually have to prevail. Am I making that up? Yes, I am. I don't know that. But you have to wonder, why would 2? But the 2 go off towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and this negotiation happens, and he finally gets all the way down to 10, and Abraham's thinking, I've done it. Surely there must be at least 10 righteous men in all of this big area, and I've saved the day. God has given consideration to his guy, his chosen person. He's going to have to understand now when it gets destroyed, there was a reason for it. And let me throw one last thing in. I think if this, you want to call it culture, the spirit that's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah spreads, it's bad for all the rest of humanity. We tend to look at this and go, well, it's not fair. God just comes out and zaps people. That's what it says.
Chapter 19. Now the 2 angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When Lot saw them, he got up to meet them, bowed face down, and said, my lords, please turn aside into the house of your servant. Wash your feet and spend the night. Then you can rise early and go on your way. No, they answered, we will spend the night in the square. But Lot insisted so strongly that they followed him into his house. He prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called out to Lot, saying, where are the men who came to you tonight? Send them out to us so we can have relations with them. Lot went outside to meet them, shutting the door behind him. Please, my brothers, he pleaded, don't do such a wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them to you, and you can do to them as you please. But do not do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. Get out of the way, they replied, and they declared, this one came here as a foreigner, and he's already acting like a judge. Now we will treat you worse than them. And they pressed in on Lot and moved in to break down the door. But the men inside reached out, pulled Lot into the house with them, and shut the door. And they struck the men at the entrance, young and old, with blindness, so that they wearied themselves trying to find the door.
Does it get any stranger than this? These 2 angels show up and Lot's at the city gate. This is a very common thing for elders to hang out at the city gate. That's where business is done. Announcements are made. And he's there, and these 2 guys show up, and you see the same hospitality gesture. As soon as these new people show up, they look for an opportunity to show their hospitality and their wealth at times. And he sees them, and he says, oh, Lord, turn aside wherever you're going. Turn aside, come to my house and spend the night, and let me feed you. Let me take care of you. It's a repeat, and it's because it's the culture. This is not unusual. And they say, no, we're going to spend the night in the square. We try not to get emotionally attached to the people we're about to destroy. That's basically what it says. And Lot, though, insisted. This is also common in the Middle East. No, and I'm a kind of I would say a picky eater. Mary would probably describe it worse than that. And they always want to feed you things that I don't want to eat, and they insist. And it's an insult to them if you say no. And so we have this. You can tell me what Cheryl's got. They say, he says, we're not going to do it, and he just insists, and they give in. Oh, she got kicked out. And they give in, and they say, okay, fine, we'll come to your house. And they go in, and evening is coming, and all of the men of the city, all of them turn out. There are 2 new visitors, and they say, hand them to us because we're going to have sexual relations with them. Now I'll go back to what got asked earlier when it says there was an outcry. Do you think that anybody unlucky enough to stumble in to Sodom and Gomorrah might have had cause to plead to God and say, because look at what they do, right? They're not saying we think they're going to enjoy this. They're saying we're going to do this to them. And Lot says, please don't do that, because there's also this big thing of someone being under the protection of your house. You're on your honor. You can't let anything happen to them, not while they're in your house. And he says, don't do this. He says, look, I've got 2 daughters who've never been with a man. I'll let you have them. That's grotesque. I remember reading this when I was younger, thinking, this has got to be a metaphor or something. Surely nobody is that grotesque. And yet there are people who sell their children all the time. And it is that grotesque. I was just naive. But they get upset when he says, don't do this. They're under my protection. I'll do. And they get mad and they go, look at this guy. He came to us as a foreigner. We took him in, and now he's trying to tell us what to do, right? How dare you tell us what to do? That's this age that we live in. Nobody tells me what to do. And they get mad and they go, we're going to do worse to you than we're going to do to them. Notice what it says. They don't think they're about to do these two newcomers a favor. They understand they're going to do something that they're going to find unpleasant. And it said, we're going to do worse to you than what we do to them if you don't send them out here. This is a pretty strong statement of what's going on. The two men inside come right to the edge, I guess, open the door, pull Lot inside, shut the door, and strike these men blind so that they wander around and can't find their way to the door. These are powerful beings. I don't see anything in here that I don't think I can take literally, that I feel like, should I consider whether that really means, no, this I think means what it says.
Well, here we go where the two men are identified as angels in the opening line of this chapter.
Yes.
So when that happens, previous chapter and the current chapter, men, angels, who supersedes what?
Who's more powerful?
No.
Were the people in the first, you can assume that they were angels.
It's just not
They look
revealed
like it.
all at once. We taught this way because we let it unfold the way it's written. You could also go to that very early part and figure Abraham recognizes these are not your ordinary travelers. If you want to read it that way, you absolutely can. I'm not going to say anything, but it's not specifically said until here, until we're told they're angels, but they always were. These
Well,
are
one of the
not
things that makes me think is that when you go to a church and they pick out a portion of the Bible to read, if you don't read this stuff all together, I mean, it's sort of a mess. I mean, if you just read one portion of it and it says men, then, I mean, you have to read the whole story together to realize that those three, I'm going to say what I believe, the three that appeared to Abraham, one was Yahweh, two were angels, whatever that means. They all look like men. And then and Yahweh stays with Abraham, talks to him. Two of them that look like men, who are angels, go to Sodom and Gomorrah. But if you read these in just little snippets, I mean, you'd be really confused.
If you believe, as we do, that things exist on more than one level here, that there is more to this place than meets the eye. The angels, I think, clearly are very powerful beings. They can come to us as looking like people. There are times like with Daniel where they're revealed, or in Revelation, they're revealed for what they are. I absolutely believe that there's more going on to this place than meets the eye. I go ahead.
And there's another clue, of course. You and I can't strike you blind. I mean, it takes extra power to do that. And that's the angel part.
No doubt.
But it's also a teaching technique. You're getting more clues and more clues that these two guys are more than just human beings. They got this extra power. And I thought that was odd when you have this Lot saying they're at my house. I think it's more than social history. It's saying these guys are special.
Oh, I think that's quite probably true. But you know, you can look at this. We're not told. It's good to understand the customs of the time,
right,
to put into. That's what I'm trying to do, is give you the context of it. Yep.
Yeah. I see the angel man same as Jesus. Form of a man, so it's the same kind of thing. It may be a precursor.
It's a very good point that Jesus is both man and God, and you see how weird this is, and the amount of I mean, what it strikes in our minds. Yes, John Paul.
For me, they're on a covert mission. The angels aren't going to show up with their wings. They're trying to find out. They're trying to find out what's going on. You know, they want to get in there and so if you're on a covert mission, you don't walk around with a placard saying, "Hey, I'm an angel, but I'm pretending to be an angel." So it just doesn't make sense. And how, okay, and the other part is, they strike them all blind, but these guys are pressing Lot into the door. They crack the door open, and he's the only one that can get through. That's more, to me, that's as supernatural as striking them blind.
Let me finish this because we'll pick it up next week. It's time, but I'm going to finish with two quick things. One of them being, as John Paul talks about, that they reach out and pull him in. I found myself in a bad situation after a sporting event. I was in trouble and about to get pounded, if not killed. I mean, really, violence had broken out. And I was younger and not the wise person I am today. And I thought I would get in and help break this up. And another time, I'll tell the whole story. But someone, pulled me out. And other than that, I'll just tell you, it felt a lot like this. And it just didn't, it was about to happen. I was dead meat. And it just stopped towards me. It was like they got distracted by someone else, but just turned their attention. There's nothing about this that I don't believe literally. There's nothing about this. And the other thing that you have to see, this negotiation that went on with Abraham trying to save Sodom and Gomorrah, he doesn't understand what he's trying to salvage. This incident of all the men in the city turning out to get their hands on these two men shows you, if you're inclined to say to yourself, I don't think it's fair that God destroyed this place. Look at this. And Abraham says, well, what if they're 50? You don't see 50 there, do you? All the men turn out doing this. There was nothing to salvage in this place. And we're not going to, yes, sir.
The other part is when Abraham's negotiation with Yahweh, it never slowed those two guys down.
No.
Traverse to the city.
No, and there are people who will tell you there are however many archangels, and one's the Michael's the angel of war, and one's the messenger, that's Gabriel. They don't know that. And here there are two of them. It took two of them. So you'll hear a lot of stuff about angels. People make up. I try to at least let you know when I'm just filling in on my own. Let's save it there for next week. God, in these verses in this scripture, we look for the reason. We look for the words you have for us. How does this help us know you better? How does this help us understand and be your hands, your feet, to operate in a world that sometimes is very broken and sometimes doesn't make sense? And you show through these things that there are indeed more things here than we perceive. There's much more. We like to look at ourselves, God, like we're the center of the universe, and we see that we should be in awe that you would even deal with us. We're children. Help us to understand that. Help us to see that we're important, but we're not the center of things, that you have a plan and you allow us to be part of it. You honor us with the ability to be part of it. Remind us to be part of it. These ones we prayed for, be with them. We absolutely ask for your hand, your comfort on them. Let them know. Amen.
I want to say something real quick. So next week, we're going to talk about Lot and finish Sodom and Gomorrah. And then we're going to take a 3-week break from Genesis to look at Holy Week. Because as we're coming close to Easter, we're going to take 3 weeks to do that. What is exciting is, if you guys have followed, even if you haven't, Chosen's 5th season, the Chosen series on the life of Jesus is coming out starting this next week. And season 5
Hold on, hey, Gene,
Gene.
can you mute the mic or
See- Yeah,
something?
just a sec. Season 5 is going to be 8 sessions just on Holy Week. So, and they're coming to the movie theaters in the next 3 weeks. So for the people that are local, either online or here, I'm going to send out some information, because like next Sunday at 12 o'clock, I'd love to see how many of you guys would like to go to see the first 2 episodes of season 5 of The Chosen together, because then we're going to be talking about it the next week. So we're going to study the Holy Week.
Easter, for those of you that didn't grow up Catholic.
Okay.
It's gonna be the week.
That would be me.
The week that Jesus spends in Jerusalem just prior to him, being crucified. And a lot of things, a big portion of the Gospels is just on that 1 week.
So, and if you haven't followed The Chosen, I think it's one of those things. Season 5 is going to be 8 episodes, and they're going to be in the movie theaters over 3 weeks, and you can catch up with The Chosen, and it's all going to be that week from what we call Palm Sunday, coming into Jerusalem through just before the crucifixion. So I think it's
And
gonna
we'd
be pretty
love to have some of you go with us
Yeah.
to go see it. I think that's what you really get.
And for those of you who are online and live in different cities, look at when The Chosen is coming out in your city and see if you can see it the next couple of weeks.
It's good to see all of you. I had begun to wonder, I was so tired yesterday when we were heading to the airport, I was starting to hallucinate. There was a reflection coming off of Mary's iPhone, and it was something, it looked like something moving in the back seat. And I keep looking up, and I think, well, I really should be looking at the road. So I'm glad we got another chance to see all of you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Yeah.
great week.
You'll have a good week too.
Thank you. Glad to see
Bye-bye.
you better, Cheryl.
Bye, y'all. Laura, I hope you feel better.
It's good to see you.
We won't be.